She went on the internet told her middle finger, and she said middle finger means so she wanted to know what is she obviously didn't go back to her mom or her teacher, went straight to the internet. She was told means sex. Now what is sex? One thing led to another, she landed up on a porn site. Well, I started Untaboo 14 years back actually. Vision nahi tha, but I think somewhere childhood mein a seed was sown कि when I have children, I'm going to talk very openly to them because I was not spoken to.
What does sex education actually mean?
So sex ed is not just about sex. That's a very, very tiny part of sex education. And it begins very early as maybe even 2 years when you're teaching them about the body parts. So it's body awareness. It's, of course, about relationship, intimacy. It's about boundaries. It's about consent. End of the day, sex ed is a life skill. And I always say sex ed is a three-legged stool. You need to educate the child, the parent, and the educator.
Talking about birds and the bees isn't always an easy conversation. We have so many parents writing into us at Kidsstoppress saying, how do I address this conversation with my child? Or how do I address this conversation with my child? Or how do I know how to address to the words or the digital screens or the things that they're learning? We were never taught to answer these questions. And some of them come from a very tabooed subject in our society. And at Kidsstoppress, we always believe that there's always an expert who you should turn to and not some content that you've seen somewhere and you believe that it is true. We always find an expert to address every question that may be bothering you as a parent. Today we have with us Anju Kish, who's a mom, a certified sexuality educator, the founder of Untaboo, and of course a dear friend. We've obviously traveled together, we've stayed in touch, we've been in the same space for a very, very long time. And if you don't know her, I don't know how you've addressed a very important aspect in your child's growing up years, which is sex education, a very important and pertinent conversation back then and even more today. Today we're going to be chatting about all of the topics that you found hard and a struggle to address. Anju, of course, has a decade-long experience in developing impactful content and facilitating workshops for kids, teens, parents, and teachers in the space of sexuality and safety education. Anju, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mansi. Such a pleasure to be just here with you. Always enjoy meeting you and having a conversation. So looking forward.
10 years ago, ये vision था कि I need to be a sexuality educator. कोई concept भी था when you started Untaboo?
Well, I started Untaboo 14 years back actually. Vision nahi tha, but I think somewhere childhood mein a seed was sown कि when I have children, I'm going to talk very openly to them because I was not spoken to, and some very basic concept I learned much later in life. Mm-hmm. So that thing was there that I'm going to talk openly. And of course, I think I've spoken about it a lot many times that when my son started asking me questions about the birds and the bees, as it used to be called back then, I wanted to give him the right answers. There were no resources available. Internet probably was not what it is today.
Yeah.
And so I took on the onus of creating those resources, and there started my journey. And I was doing very well as a copywriter in a leading agency in Mumbai, and I just took a turn, and it's been a beautiful journey.
I'm so glad, and I feel like I love when moms go on this journey to start the best product, services for their children, because it's born out of a very innate need of a gap that we found while we were raising our children. And that's how actually Kidsstoppress was also born. So I'm just so happy to hear that. कोई apprehension था family में husband के साथ that ये क्या है, ये मतलब profession भी नहीं है, how are you going to talk about sex in front of random people, to children, क्यों बताने की ज़रूरत है, why this need? Was there any sort of apprehension like that?
No, in fact, my husband has been literally the wind beneath my wing. There have been days, because it's a very challenging field. There have been days and moments when I said, why am I doing this? Why am I facing these brickbats at times? And I want to give up. And he said, no, you're good at it and it's needed. You will go for it. Till today, he's the person who's really, pushed me on and egged me on. Of course, there were people in the family, in the friend group who would make fun, who would ridicule you for what you were doing. But all the neighbors have become staunch
मेरे बच्चे को भी
supporters.
सिखा दो,
Yes.
हमारे स्कूल में भी आ जाओ. I love that.
Yeah.
That happens to all of us, right? Did your son ever say, "Mom, why do you need to do this?" Or my friends are pulling my leg. Your mom talks about sex. Did that ever happen when he was
yes.
younger?
Oh, yes. It did happen because the kids didn't understand what sex education
Yeah.
was, right? The term sex itself
Yeah.
it sets off alarm bells.
Yeah.
Right? Either it gets you excited or completely, scares you.
Yeah.
And especially when the term is used with kids. And I chose not to shy away from using the word sex education right from beginning. I could have called it body literacy, safety, anything, but I thought sex ed was the right term. So yes, the kids did face some teasing and ridicule by their friends, but when those friends started attending the workshop, then they were envied. That, oh my God, you can talk to your mom about anything. Can you please ask her about this concept and that concept? Then they were like much in demand. So,
Right.
yeah.
Amazing. Tell me, the moment people hear words like sex education, they assume it's just about sex.
Right.
What does sex education actually mean? And what is it that you teach children, parents, and teachers at your workshops, respectively? Like, break it down for us.
Right. So I can completely understand the fear parents have about sex education because of the presence of this word sex in this term. So that's completely understandable. But I think we need to go beyond that and try to understand what sex ed means and why is it important. Right? Let me give you an analogy to explain this is we all eat food, right? You eat food, I eat food, kids eat food, everybody eats food. Now you can eat it mindlessly or you can eat it with awareness. So if you teach your kids about nutrition, they will know what's the food which is good for them, what to eat when, the right age to maybe have certain kinds of food. It could be alcohol, the right age for it. What happens if you eat the wrong food? So they'll eat it with awareness. Sex ed is just like that.
Right.
A child can go through life without any sex ed and could be okay or could face major issues. But if they know about body awareness, they know about boundaries, they know about consent, they know about changes which are going to happen to them, they just beautifully sail through this period.
Yeah.
So sex ed is that. It's not just about sex. That's a very, very tiny part of sex education. And it begins very early as maybe even 2 years when you're teaching them about the body parts. So it's
Right.
body awareness. It's, of course, about relationship, intimacy. It's about boundaries. It's about consent. It's about, end of the day, sex ed is a life skill.
Right. I'm so glad that you say that. The right vocabulary, because, while the kids are very young, we never address it with the right name. We address it with pee, wee wee, this, that, whatever. What's the right vocabulary to use at the right age?
You know what the kids call it? A lot of kids across the country call their private parts MP, which is main part.
Okay.
Now they figured that in this entire body, this is the part which is the main part. आपने उनको sex education दी नहीं है, लेकिन उनको समझ गया है कि ये main part है because ये topic पे हरदम avoidance होता है. Teach them right from the beginning. If they don't hesitate to call an I an I, why should we hesitate to call the genitals by their correct name, which is penis and vulva? Just normalize it. And I have parents coming and telling me, oh, my son came to me, my 5-year-old son came to me and said, Mama, my penis is very scratchy today. And she said, I was so proud that he said it so normally. And why shouldn't it be normal?
Yeah. Are we talking of a very small segment in the society, Anju?
See, change has to begin from somewhere. It's going to take years for this change to happen, but I see it happening. In my 14 years in this field, I've seen a huge change in the conversations we are having, in the way parents are opening up to the children, in the way children are opening up to the parents.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me, break that down. You said it starts as early as 2. How are you addressing sex at 2? How are you doing it at 5? How are you doing it at 8? How are you doing it at 15?
Right. So at 2, it starts at home. It first starts at home by teaching your children the right terminology for their bodies. So do not ignore, telling them the right terms for their genitalia. Because when you do that, you're calling attention to a particular part by
Yeah.
ignoring that part. So
Yeah.
just deal with it naturally. If this is your eyes and nose, this is your penis and your vulva.
Yeah.
Just deal with it in that manner. Show them the genitals at a very early age through child-friendly animated images, because the curiosity begins very early about this part which is covered and not shown. So in schools as early as 4 years or even 3 years, they are in the washrooms wanting to see what the other's genitals look like. So give them that education. Talk about privacy. Talk about things which are private and done in a private space. So whether it's streaking naked in the house, it's a private act meant to be done only in your bedroom or in the washroom. So when you teach them that, teach them consent, teach them bodily autonomy. Now, bodily autonomy may sound like a big term, but it starts with very basic things of asking a child whether they want to hug a relative or not, whether they want to go somewhere with somebody. So I think just small concepts which later turn into bigger conversations.
Right.
And of course, as they grow older, there's talks on puberty, then come sex, reproduction, contraceptives, masturbation, pornography, impact of that.
Right.
The endless topics.
You're obviously addressing this in multiple schools and through your workshops. I've attended your talks as a parent. Why do you think it's important for the parent to go through this process?
The questions can come anywhere, right? It's not that if a child needs to learn counting, they need to go to school.
Yeah.
It starts with home,
Yeah.
right? And even if sex ed is something the schools are taking on the burden of or onus of and teaching it in school, when the child comes home, the child needs an environment which is supportive.
Right.
It's supportive of their questions, it's supportive of the confusion that they are facing, and generally a supportive environment to whatever experiences they are having,
Right.
to be supportive of that. So that's why it's extremely important. I always say sex ed is a three-legged stool. You need to educate the child, the parent, and the educators.
Right.
Only then will it be a very steady, base on which they can grow in a very healthy manner.
Right. And I'm going to ask this straight up, that now there is this sexual vocabulary that is slowly building in, and children get exposed because they're traveling with multiple different age group kids in the bus, and the bus has become, like, literally the school bus is a playground for knowledge beyond books, right? Tell me, when kids come up and ask questions like, Mom, I heard the F word, how should I react as a parent?
I think appreciate the child for coming up to you and asking you or sharing that.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for sharing that. And would you want to know what does that mean? Or why do people go all or create those kind of expressions
Yeah.
when you use it? Would you like to know? Because I'd like to have a conversation with you. And then go on to tell them. Now you needn't tell them what it actually means, right? It depends on the age of the child. If the child is older, sure, go ahead and tell them. What's important to tell them that it is disrespectful. When you use the F word, it was actually an analogy, or not an analogy, but a synonym for saying that you want to have sex with someone. But now the F word has become a generic term. You're
Yeah.
angry with somebody, you say F off. Even if you see a beautiful piece of a pastry and it's looking amazing, you'll say OF.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a very generic term, but it is still a term which is considered disrespectful, especially when said by a child.
Right.
So talk about them, talk about respectful, disrespectful vocabulary. And I always say that tell them a little bit about what it means so that you deter them from using it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And they don't go elsewhere to
Yeah.
find that meaning, stumbling upon
yeah.
so many other conversations that may not be age appropriate.
Absolutely. And we've had so many incidents, right? Mom shared that her 6 or 7-year-old daughter asked her, what does the middle finger mean? And she said, oh, nothing, it's nothing, it's just a middle finger. So she went to her teacher asking her, what does the middle finger mean? Teacher said, it's just a finger. She said, then why is everybody says that don't use the middle finger? She said, see, it's the same, there's nothing wrong. It's just a bad thing people consider, don't use it. A child today does not want to know that this is not good, don't use it.
Yeah.
She went on the internet told her middle finger, and pardon my French, but she said the middle finger means fuck. So she wanted to know what is fuck. She obviously didn't go back to her mom or her teacher.
Yeah.
went straight to the internet. She was told fuck means sex. Now, what is sex? One thing led to another. She landed upon a porn site.
Right.
One question not answered, what does the middle finger mean, lands the child onto a porn site. How do you address that now? That's a bigger problem.
Right.
So tackle those questions when they come to you in an age-appropriate manner. And there's always a language you can find to address it age-appropriately.
Right. Again, a question that's often asked and discussed on the bus. 69. That's a conversation, and I can hear the giggles when I hear that word. And how do you address that with a child?
So 69 is something, one of the most common questions we get from children as young as in the second grade. And again, it's not that they know about it. They've heard it and they've heard the giggles around it, and that's why they're very curious. Well, if I were to address it probably with a very young child, I'll tell them that, numbers represent things. Sometimes we use, say we want to pee, we'll say I want to do number 1. Right? Or 2 for pooping. Or sometimes we want to say that somebody's a cheat, we'll probably say, oh, he's a 420. That used to be a vocabulary used earlier.
Yeah.
Right? So we use numbers to represent things. 69 is a number sometimes used to represent 2 adults in a loving embrace. Maybe with a child that's enough. But the reason we hesitate as parents, because in our mind we know the sexual connotation behind 69, and we say, oh my God, you mean I'm going to explain sexual positions to my child now? And you immediately reject that option out and tell your child, what nonsense, where are you learning all this from? Stay away from that child.
Right.
We react in a negative manner.
Right. Another question that comes by, which I find moms finding very, very hard to address, is when the mother is menstruating and she has her period. She doesn't know how to tell the child, and finding it very hard to distinguish between what she tells a girl child and she tells a boy child. So how would you help that mother?
I think menstruation is something you should tell your child very early on. You can even speak to a 5 and 6-year-old about periods. And it's a beautiful story you can weave around it. You can maybe say something like, every girl is born with a little baby bag inside of her for the time when she grows up and has a baby. Now, because this baby bag is inside, it needs cleaning, right? It needs maintenance. And so the body maintains it by, creating a nice lining inside, keeping it healthy, and then that lining needs to come out because the baby is not there. Now, this lining comes out in the form of blood from her private parts, and she needs a little sanitary napkin to soak up this blood, and that's a girl's period. And also the fact that when she has her period, it could be a difficult time for her. She could be cramping up, she could be irritable. So just support her at that time. If you ever see a girl in your school with a blood stain, do not tease her. Go up to her, ask her if she needs any help. You've started to raise an empathetic individual, boy or girl.
Yeah.
And you've given them the information. As they grow older, add on to this. Give more details about what is that lining, why is it shedding. So basically, you're setting a foundation and then you're building on that foundation.
Yeah. Also, Anju, I feel the men in our country, especially the fathers, find it very difficult to have a period conversation with their daughters. Has that changed over time?
It has changed. It has changed. And I think conversations around it I've seen a change. So I always talk about this in my parent talks, and I've had dads come back to me.
Do dads come into parent talks on sex ed?
They do. There are still schools where you will see one dad amongst hundreds of moms, and in their schools where you'll see a 50-50. So yes, things are changing and conversations are changing. Dad's involvement in the conversation is increasing, but again, if we were to look at the population that we have, it may not even be a drop in the ocean, right? But at least the change has begun. And talking about periods, I think it's so important dads be a part of this conversation because it normalizes period for a girl. It takes away the shame, it takes away the stigma of getting periods, and takes away the hush-hush conversations around periods. So it's very important dads are a part of this.
Right. You earlier spoke of the child, this girl who's 6 or 7, accidentally stumbling upon a porn site. Digital exposure and early digital adoption today has led our kids to be on screens much earlier and therefore exposed to some sort of unrestricted content
Correct.
play. How has that enhanced their, their exposure to sexual or
Content.
restricted content?
See, digital exposure and general exposure in the environment
Yeah.
to adult content today is creating havoc. And at Untaboo workshops, we see the hundreds of questions which are coming our way, which showcases to us what is the exposure this child has had. It is, of course, being on the internet, unsupervised probably, or even if it is supervised, you never know what pops up. Gaming, online gaming, that's a huge source of exposure because they have chat rooms there. There are predators there who are grooming children out there. Then you have the shows, OTT. There is no censorship there. So what they're seeing in OTT, what they're consuming through social media, huge impact. Let me talk about a few impacts. I had a child in the 5th grade asking me, can I have a baby with my sister? And I started to talk to him about the fact that, there are different kinds of relationships and the roles of a different relationship. He said, no, I've seen it in a show, a brother and a sister have a baby. And which show was this? This was Game of Thrones. Now, a child is watching Game of Thrones. I'm sure the parents don't know about it, has seen a scene and believes it to be the reality.
Right.
And you don't know what's going to happen when the child is with, his sister.
Yeah.
And a lot of sibling experimentation is happening today.
Yeah.
Because of what they're consuming, probably. Gaming, cuss words in the chat rooms of gaming, a major increase in that because of that. Social media, I can't stress enough about the fact that kids today are growing up with so many body esteem issues. They're worried about being a certain size. They're worried about their height, all stemming from what they're seeing on the social media, of beauty standards being what they are. So yes, this entire digital exposure is creating havoc. And if we don't start conversations, we're really headed for disaster.
Right. You mentioned about the gaming rooms and child predators there, and we've already seen so much.
Right.
On Roblox especially, right, where we've seen multiple predators being there and children being exploited. Walk me through some of your experiences in terms of conversations that you've had with parents and what really happens there and what should a parent do?
See, today you cannot stop a child from gaming, right? That's another challenge, that you cannot stop them. So conversation and safety measures are the only thing that you can do. Of course, you have your filters in place even for content, but even gaming have certain rules in place.
Yeah.
You play that game first with the child. Get involved, see what it entails, what are the chat rooms like, what kind of conversations happen, keep continuously monitoring that time and again. Tell your child that, okay, these chat rooms are there. You can play this game, but maybe not go on the chat room. Or if you go on the chat room,
But there will always be curiosity कि अच्छा ये chat room में जाने के लिए मना क्यों कर रहा है मैं जरा
No, but tell them that, okay, there are all kinds of people. There could be people there who pretend to be 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds, but they may be adults. Okay, and they're talking about things which are not appropriate for you. And if you see something there which makes you uncomfortable, do come and share with me so that I can help you understand that. Even when you're talking to a child, never ban them from something because that, like you rightly said, creates that curiosity. But educate them about it.
Right.
Or if you see something pop up on the chat, say that, what, this person is talking about this particular thing or is using a cuss word. Do you know what that means? So have those conversations. I think that's important. So setting your filters, having conversations, helping them process it. YouTube is another major thing, right? They're following influencers. How many of you as parents know which influencers your child is following? How many of you know, is it age appropriate? In one school, in one particular grade, we found an entire bunch of boys with very patriarchal thoughts. Like when I was trying to explain periods to them and the fact that women have cramps, they are like, oh, they do? Amazing. Let them deal with it. Very, very those kind of thoughts about what very toxic masculinity attitudes. I found it again in another school in another part of the country. And I was wondering what's happening here. Till we started talking to these kids and we found that they were all following a particular influencer. And that influencer is famous for, having very talks on what masculinity means and how you should treat women. Now, parents, you would be unaware that your child is following something and the attitudes are being defined by that.
Right.
So follow the influencer your child is following.
That is so true. And follow every person your child deeply admires, because whether it's the songs, whether it's thought process, whether it's, their orientation, everything will kind of change with that.
And the songs, like you said, the cuss words in the songs.
Yeah.
When your child is singing that, it normalizes it.
Yeah.
I just had a mother in one of the talks ask me that my child is singing this song by this famous Punjabi singer which has the word in it. Right? And what do I do? I've been telling him not to sing it, and he says, oh, it's a song. So I'm telling him, no, it's a bad verse. He wants to know what it is, and I'm at a loss too.
So how do you address that, Anju?
Again, depends on the age of the child. Right? See, the word can be explained easily to a young child by telling them, because we all speak to our kids about safe and unsafe touch. So you can tell them that actually means touching somebody's private parts without their permission, forcefully. That's what means, right? So if you've explained that to a child, then you just say that, means that somebody wants to touch your mom's genitals. Is that cool? Would you be okay with that? Now, when you're singing and using this word, you're normalizing that. Now, that really gets a child's attention, and they say, oh, maybe I don't want to use that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes just telling a child a little bit of what it means really works as a deterrent.
Right. You spoke of YouTube, and I had this question that came my way on Instagram, which was on a parent writing into us to say that their child has been exposed to this sort of content, which was suggested, and the child was just accidentally, stumbled upon, and now the entire feed is like that, and the child has seen that content. What should I do? What would you advise to them?
You mean the child has stumbled upon porn?
Yes.
Yeah. See, porn is again a conversation you should have before a child stumbles upon it. And again, we resist it because we say if we have to talk about porn, that means we have to talk about sex.
Yes.
Right? But it can be a conversation maybe with just basic information that sometimes you may chance upon some content which seems very different, which kind of makes you feel slightly uncomfortable. It might give you a very confused feeling about what you're saying, about what you're seeing. If you ever see something like that, I just want you to shut off your computer and come to me and we'll talk about it. And I'll help you process what you've seen. That could be just the first conversation with them. But if a child has already seen porn, never make the child feel guilty about it. Do not scold the child for it. Child could have accidentally stumbled upon it. Child could have gone and searched it out. But remember, it's curiosity. And every curiosity is valid. Now, we just have to help the child satisfy that curiosity in a more healthy manner. Right. Talk to them about the fact that these are videos of people in a certain state of undress doing certain adult acts, but it is not reality. It is real. Like you don't see a Superman movie where a cape and jump off the terrace hoping to fly. Yeah. Right? This is exaggerated. It's not real, and that's what these videos are, and they're meant for adults.
Right.
So I think those conversations, and then you can keep adding more details. You can talk about the laws around porn watching. You can talk about the impact on the brain cells, almost rewiring if you watch porn. Talk about porn with impact on relationships. Lots of topics to talk about, but start with the basic and keep building onto that conversation.
Another bit that we are seeing, and I recently read about this study where the Gen Z are not very happy with their sex life because they're idealizing it through porn or actualizing it through that. And there is a huge difference between expectations and reality. What would you say to that?
Oh, we have questions on this all the time. Questions like the size of the penis. How long can you last in bed? Why do women moan? Can you swallow cum? Is it healthy? All of these questions are complete indicators that the child is watching porn, right? Now, from there stems body esteem issues. Why is my body not the way I see, or why is
Yeah.
my partner's body not where? The kinds of sexual acts you see there, of course, exaggerated. We've had people land up in hospital because they tried to, do what is shown in
Yeah.
those porn films. So telling them that again they're exaggerated, they are, um, makes a difference. So yes, talking to them about all these things really, really helps. Where we are, kind of segregating what is real and what is
You have a
real.
hard job.
It is hard if you think it is hard.
No, just the expectation and reality gap to bridge, to tell them that yes, sahi, this is not the real part of it. This is a very
So I think if you give them the analogies and the facts. So for example, if you're giving them, the analogy of the fact that, okay, for example, if you're talking about the size of the penis, and I think probably this is going to be a controversial one, but here it is any which ways. People believe that the size of the penis is very, very important, right? But actually, medically, the central nerve centers in a woman's vagina are only in the first 1.5 inches of a vagina, the most sensory nerve centers. So a penis, even if it is, at 2.5, 3 inches at erect state, is enough. And as far as anal sex is concerned, the anus doesn't have any sensory nerve centers. So the size of the penis doesn't really matter. Now, just giving this scientific fact to the child, suddenly you'll see them. The moment you start, somebody asks a question on penis size, everybody will turn typically to one or two boys and start laughing at them. And the moment you say this fact, you'll see that boy's shoulder go straight. He sit up on his seat, look at the others and say, there. Suddenly you've empowered that child. So giving them the facts really helps.
Anju, let's also talk about a very important part, which is safety. And I think we've finally reached a stage in India where we are emphasizing so much on child safety to prevent child sexual abuse.
Right.
And I think that distance we're crossing it, but very, very slowly and gently. Or definitions are constantly evolving. Where are we now, and how is this definition evolving of child safety?
See, I think what's really happened is the awareness about child safety is really increased, and thanks to a lot of organizations working deeply in this field, and also because of shows like which talk about child safety, which have so that is one good thing which has happened. Schools are taking on the onus, parents are taking on the onus, but I think what we are talking, how effective it is one big question mark. When we're talking about child safety,
Sorry, you'll have to take that.
that's okay.
Child safety.
So, yeah. We all are talking about child safety, parents, schools, organizations, but the manner in which those conversations are held decides upon the effectiveness of those conversations. It is not about instilling fear in the child, right? It's about empowering them to keep themselves safe. And it is not just empowering them to keep themselves safe, it's also empowering them not to compromise the safety of others. That's a conversation a lot of us miss out when we talk about safety to our children. How many, of course, we talk to our young kids about safe touch and unsafe touch, but how many of us empower them to say that no to people close to them? How many of us respect the no? अगर किसी बच्चे ने बोल दिया कि मुझे वो आंटी के लैप में नहीं बैठना है, तो एक थप्पड़ भी शायद पड़ जाएगी कि अरे तुम्हारी मौसी है, चाची है, क्यों नहीं बैठोगे? तो बच्चा समझने लगता है कि उसका ना नहीं होता है, is not respected. So when somebody abuses them and they're saying no, they're saying it so feebly because they know कि अरे पर ये तो चाचा, मामा, काका, काकी जो भी है, मैं कैसे ना बोलूँ इसको, right? So empower that child, give that child the power to say a no and respect that no. ये तो छोटे बच्चों के लिए है. Even with older kids, when we're teaching them, we're not even teaching them about safety. We're not talking to them about sex, तो हम safety की तो बात ही नहीं कर रहे. Today, teenage pregnancy is on the rise. STIs are so much out there. लेकिन how many of us are talking to our kids? हमें लगता है कि अगर हम बच्चों से contraception की बात करेंगे, STI की बात करेंगे, मतलब we are giving them permission कि अच्छा अभी जाके तुम experiment कर सकते हो. But this is a twisted logic. Don't we tell our children about alcohol कि alcohol मत पियो, drugs मत लो? Does that mean we are giving them permission to have alcohol? तो सिर्फ सेक्स की बात करने में ही क्यों ये हिचक होती है? Do you let your child walk out alone on the road? एक छोटा बच्चे को आप ट्रैफिक में भेज देते हो अकेले? आप नहीं भेजते हो, उसका हाथ पकड़ के उसे क्रॉस करवाते हो, सिखाते हो उसे क्रॉस करना. तो how can we leave them alone in the society without a talk on sex ed? We're throwing them in the deep end of the pool when they don't know how to swim. So have those conversations and safety will emerge from there.
Right. You said a very interesting thing about shows to watch. So I'm going to ask you, ऐसे कोई शोज़ हैं जो आप रेकमेंड करते हैं जो पेरेंट्स अपने बच्चों के साथ दे शुड वॉच, and some shows which are rated on any of the OTT platforms as a 7 plus, 8 plus, and are completely messing it up for our children?
I really wouldn't know.
Which one do you not want to answer?
No, I don't know which shows are there, but I can talk about shows in general.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. So you say the answer. I'll frame back fit my question after I listen to the answer.
Okay. See, there are all kinds of shows on TV and OTT. Some could have a rating, some may not have a rating, and even if it has a adult rating, there is no way you can stop a child from watching it if they want to. They're not being monitored 24/7. So I think it's important that even if you're watching a show which is a slightly adult show and some scene comes up, if it's not too graphic, watch it with a child and then later have a conversation. In fact, you can actually use shows to start a conversation with your child. अगर आप hesitate कर रहे हो कि मैं ये conversation कैसे चालू करूँ, मैंने तो कभी अपने बच्चे से बात ही नहीं की है, कैसे चालू करूँ, तो कोई भी एक मूवी उठा लो, बॉलीवुड, हॉलीवुड मूवी देखना चालू करो, उसमें कोई ना कोई सीन होएगा which will give you an opportunity to have a conversation. There was an old movie, Dostana, I think Abhishek and John Abraham. It's a great conversation on same-sex relationships to have. You see a teenage pregnancy, unmarried girl. Great conversation to have, a conversation on safety and what happens if you get pregnant as a teenager. So every scene, every movie, it's an opportunity for conversations.
Right.
So rather than banning them from, seeing certain scenes, of course, graphic hai, definitely change karo, but otherwise use it as an opportunity.
Right. So the question to that will be, Anju, sometimes I don't know how to begin that conversation with my child. How can I do it more seamlessly if I'm a little awkward? I think especially opposite gender mein, you feel a little awkward. If it's a mom and a son or if it's a father and a daughter, I think we kind of hesitate. And I think maybe the answer lies, like you said, in movies, right? That you would actually do that. Let's talk about masturbation. I know that there was this place that Anju and I visited, and I know one of the children actually asked you that what is the right amount of times that he should masturbate, because he thought he had almost got addicted to doing it. And it was becoming a release because of the anxiety that he was going through. So how would you address that question?
See, masturbation is something which a child will discover whether you talk to them or you don't talk to them as a parent. So it's better you talk to them and give them the right information about it, because there are do's and don'ts on masturbation. Masturbation always has to be done in privacy. It has to be done with hygienic practices. And 3, moderation. Now, the moderation, and what this kid asked the question is about moderation, that how many times can he masturbate? I think moderation is defined by the individual themselves. If it's tiring you out, keeping you from your day-to-day activities, you feel you're obsessed with it, then obviously you're overdoing it. And I think another most important thing about masturbation to remember for kids and for parents to talk to kids about is that do not make it a habit. So if you feel that you cannot sleep at night if you haven't masturbated, it's becoming a habit. Habit could turn into compulsive masturbation. If you cannot study if you haven't masturbated, again, it's turning into a habit. Of course, go ahead and masturbate when you feel like it, but don't make it compulsive masturbation for the sake of masturbation.
Right. And I think another topic that leads me on to it, I think it's a word that's only related to men. Do girls also feel it?
Masturbation? Yeah, you're so right. It's we only talk about masturbation and porn also in the context of only men. But girls watch porn too, and girls masturbate too. In fact, a lot of times I have these questions by, boys in the classroom, but how do girls masturbate?
Yeah.
I say the same way that you do, by touching and feeling your genitalia, right? So, of course, girls masturbate because the sex hormones are present in both males and females. So the sexual feelings are present in both males and females. It's only in our Indian society that we always curtailed the, sexual feelings and sexuality of a woman.
Right. Right. Another question that we get very often and is that the parents and the child are sleeping in the same room and the child has seen the parent in the act. Ab main kya karoon? If
Correct.
my kids have seen me having sex, ab main kya karoon? How do you do that?
See, we all stay in small houses in metros.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not always possible to have a separate bedroom for the child. The child is sleeping with you. I would just tell the parents that change your timing. The child does go to school. The child does go out at time, change your timing. But if you have not and the child has seen you in the act, the first thing is, of course, cover up and then have a conversation with the child. The child typically feels very guilty about it, is curious, but also feels very guilty about it. So assure the child that it's not your fault. It's our fault. We should have been more careful that we had the privacy before we did this, and then have a conversation about the fact that what is this? That adults express their love in a different kind of a way. Adults who are in a committed relationship express their love differently. And what you've seen was that. I don't ever want you to feel bad or guilty about it. And if you have any more questions, I'm here to answer it.
Right. Another bit that comes to mind is a question where a lot of parents are finding it very hard to understand sexual orientation and gender identity. How are the two different?
So actually, there are 3 terms which everybody gets confused about. One is biological sex, gender identity, and sexuality. So biological sex or sex is the genitals you're born with. So that is the gender assigned to you at birth. Gender identity is who you feel from inside. Who do you identify as? It's a feeling. So that is known as your gender identity. If your gender identity matches your gender sex assigned to you at birth, then the term given to you is cisgender. If it doesn't match it, say you're born with a penis, the sex given to you at birth is male, but you identify as a female growing up, and because there's a mismatch, then the term given to you is transgender. Now, sexuality is who you're attracted to, who you're inherently drawn towards. And that is known as your sexual orientation or sexuality.
Amazing. And सबसे पहले the thought comes is हमारे ज़माने में तो ये नहीं था, right? Especially for people being gay or identifying themselves as gays and lesbians. And how does it, like, they find it very hard to comprehend कि ये क्या नया फिनोमिनन है, ये इन्हीं बच्चों के साथ क्यों हो रहा है, हमारे ज़माने में नहीं था. Like, what is causing? And like we were at a mental health conference and somebody said कि the child who identified himself to be gay, they take him to a baba and then they take him to an allopathic doctor and then to a homeopathic doctor and then spirituality and then tantra and all of that to ensure that he refrains from identifying himself as whoever he identifies himself to be. So is this a new phenomenon?
It's definitely not a new phenomenon. Research now, of course, even historically when we see there are cases, there are stories even in our Ramayana and Mahabharata about people who existed with either a different gender identity or a sexual orientation. But it's not spoken about enough, right? And sometimes back then, people didn't have the vocabulary to express how they felt. And I always like to give this example of, I remember my mom, when I was a teenager, my mom, and we stayed in a town which had severe winters, she would not wear a sweater, she would wear a shawl. Because suddenly in the peak of winter, she'd feel very hot and throw off her shawl. And we used to wonder, what's wrong with you, Mom? Why are you doing this? Years later, now we realize it's hot flashes one experiences at menopause. Today, everybody knows about menopause, the hot flashes you experience. So we have the vocabulary to understand what somebody was experiencing. earlier days, probably the vocabulary was not there. Today we have the vocabulary and we feel, is this a new phenomenon? It's not. It's just that now we have the words to express what we feel.
Right. So, and parents are finding it hard. So I think, and parents are aware, but acceptance नहीं है. Like awareness है कि हाँ ऐसा कुछ होता है, but I'm sure ये मेरे बच्चे के साथ नहीं होगा.
So acceptance इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि हम ये words को ठीक से समझते नहीं हैं. एंड बिकॉज समझते नहीं हैं हमें लगता है ये नॉर्मल नहीं है. जब हम ये बात समझ जाएंगे कि ये नॉर्मल है, रिसर्च वर्ल्ड वाइड इज़ प्रूविंग दैट दिस इज़ इनहेरेंटली, ये वूम में होता है बिकॉज ऑफ वेरियस रीजन्स होता है. सो व्हेन अ चाइल्ड इज़ बॉर्न, दे आर बॉर्न विद दैट फीलिंग which manifests itself very early in life or at puberty or a little later in line. I mean, if I were to give you an analogy, some of us like sweet things, some of us like savory things. It is inherent to us, right? So this is also something which is inherent. We are born with it. जब आप ये बात समझ जाएं कि ये नॉर्मल है, नेचुरल है, तो आप फिर इस बात से डरोगे नहीं. जब सोसाइटी इस चीज़ को नॉर्मलाइज कर देगी तो यू विल नॉट बी स्कैर्ड कि मेरे बच्चे के साथ ऐसा ना हो.
Right. Anju, one of the concluding questions that I think every parent is feeling right now is everything's happening much earlier. Correct. Right? With exposure, whether it's puberty hitting at 8 and 9, whether it's sex at 14, 15. How do we prepare ourselves as parents for something that cannot be reversed, especially unsafe sex,
Right.
or in case of a lot of teenagers? How do we prepare ourselves as parents to empower our kids?
So it has to be preventive education rather than curative education. We take a vaccination to prevent diseases, or we can take a medicine after we've had the disease. So sex ed conversations are just the same. You have those conversations very, very early on so that the child starts understanding their bodies, they're understanding relationships, starts understanding safety, sex, and thus they learn to take informed decisions. You know, it's not upon us to teach them to kind of define the decisions for them, but it is it is on us to teach them how to take those decisions which are based on knowledge and not based on misinformation or what their peers are, teaching them. So I always give this analogy of fire extinguisher. We all have fire extinguishers in the building, but many few of us have it in the home because we feel कि अरे आग थोड़ी लगेगी. जब तक आग लगती नहीं है, नेबर के घर में आग लगेगी, then you will feel कि अरे नहीं, it's necessary and you'll put a fire extinguisher at home. So sex ed भी ऐसा ही है. It's very trigger led. We feel कि अरे कुछ क्या ज़रूरत है, हम भी तो बड़े हो गए without any sex ed. Till we hear about a child watching porn in the neighborhood, or we hear about a child being sexually abused in the school, then we feel, oh my God, I need to have those conversations. Yeah. Do not make these conversations trigger-led. Have those conversations without a trigger. Have those conversations even if the child is not asking you questions.
Right. Before we conclude, any anecdotes from all the amazing workshops that you've done across the country that have still stayed with you in these 14 years?
Well, what's really stayed with me, and I really talk about this in a lot of my talks, and I don't know whether it will be a repeat, but I'm going to still say it because that is one anecdote very close to my heart. I was doing a session with 12th graders in a boarding school, and in the anonymous question box, there was one question. When I was answering the question box, one question came up and it said, will you remove your kurta and show us your breasts? And I could have ignored it. I chose to read it out. And it was an opportunity for me to give them a talk on the fact that this constitutes sexual harassment. And they could be in trouble if I choose to complain. And what does sexual harassment mean? Like in India, we grow up on Bollywood and we do not understand the difference between what could be healthy flirting and what could be sexual harassment. What could be a joke and what could amount to sexual harassment. So I explained to them what sexual harassment means. And then I continued with my session. After an hour, the anonymous question box was full again and I started removing questions and answering it. And one of the chits in big bold letters, it was written, I apologize. And that still gives me goosebumps because, Mansi, it tells me that change is possible with conversations even within an hour.
Interesting.
Conversations have the power to bring about that change. So do not shy away from those conversations. I think let's remove that fear of the fact, let's remove the ifs and buts we have about sex education, that it will take away our child's innocence. No, it will not. It will arm your child to protect their innocence. It will make them experiment. No, it will not. It will make them be responsible whenever they're experimenting. So take away that fear. Sex education is a powerful tool. Use it.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, that was a tough question, and I love how you answer all of these questions with a straight face, not a smile, not a iota of shame, but so much confidence that I think it just reflects on the amazing work that you're doing. So thank you for chatting with us. Parenting tips, celebrity interviews, recipes, conversations with experts, DIYs, and lots more. Subscribe to Kidsstoppress now.